it is very clear that there are different roles. Within the context of marriage specifically, men are the head. Here's another thing too that I think is just so ridiculous. You got a lot of women over here butthurt that men are their head. You got even have Christian feminists that say, oh, I don't believe in submission. I don't believe men should lead. I don't believe men should be the head. I mean, I understand this in the Bible, but we're in a patriarchal system, and we're in a system where men rule and men in control, yada, 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 X, Y, Z, A, B, and C. Now, we already know within the Black community, patriarchy is null and void. That doesn't really exist. That is not a thing in Black American culture. It is not a thing because Black men are the targets of white male patriarchy. So Black male patriarchy is a myth. We already know this. Secondly, what is oftentimes conveniently overlooked is that any person who is called to be a leader in the gospel has the heavier burden. They have the higher call. Christ himself said, whoever among you wants to be the greatest must also be the least. He says, the greatest among you will be the servant. Even if you see the way that he led, he sacrificed himself. It gives men the calling and the responsibility to lay down their life the way Christ laid down his life for the church. So men who are the head and are the leaders have the higher call, have the higher level of responsibility. So what so often I hear removed from this conversation is that while many women I feel are fighting for that position or fighting for that equality, even within marriage or within the context of relationship, they conveniently overlook the responsibility and the burden associated with that. Do you want, as a woman, to have the responsibility to lay your life down for your husband as Christ to the church? Do you want that call? Do you want that responsibility? Or would you much rather respect your husband? Those are the instructions to women. Women, respect, honor your husband. Honor him as you would the Lord. Who has the higher call? The person who's supposed to sacrifice himself as Christ to the church? Or the person who's supposed to honor and respect that who sacrificed? Who has the higher call? Who has the heavier responsibility? Even if you look in the story of Genesis, when Eve sinned, who did God go to? God didn't go directly to Eve. He didn't go directly to Eve. He went to Adam. He said, Adam, what's going on in your house? Adam was judged. He was judged according to what happened with his wife. Why? Because he was the head. He was a protector. He was supposed to be the one helping to navigate and guide and protect his wife. I've heard some pastors say Adam at that time wasn't on his job. He was a little bit passive. He didn't get involved. Why was he allowing Eve to talk to the serpent? Like, I've heard all kinds of different interpretations of that. But nevertheless, when Eve sinned, because she was under the headship of Adam, God went directly to the head. So again, there is a heavier call and a heavier responsibility. And so while we're fighting to try to be equal or fighting to try to be the heads, we forget that there's also a higher level of responsibility and also a higher level of service associated with that. Ladies, are you ready? That's what I see. Parthenogenesis. That's what they mean. Parthenogenesis. I just saw it. Ladies, are you ready? I would argue that many of us are not. So I would say that, especially if you call yourself a Christian or a Christ follower, don't get caught up in that whole BS of I'm a Christian, but this is still patriarchal and patriarchy, and I need to be equal. We need to be co-equals. You don't want that because you can't handle the responsibility. You can't. You just simply can't. You weren't made to. And as soon as you try to insert yourself into that wrongful position, it causes havoc and chaos. It just is what it is, y'all.